Welcome to the channel. My name is Todd and I'm the Confused Wanderer. In today's episode, I'm going to cover the three types of people found in third density. Now, if you haven't already, watch my previous videos explaining the raw material and the evolutionary process of a soul, starting with first density, second density, and then now covering all the dynamics in third density, our third density experience, which we're experiencing now. I would recommend going back and reviewing all of those videos just so you get, a foundational understanding of the groundwork and the evolutionary process of a soul as it moves through the densities and then lands in third density, which we're in now and called the density of choice. And I'm going to spend quite some time going over the most important concepts to understand in third density. Third density is a 75,000 year cycle, and it's called the density of choice. And the choice we have to make through our actions is to polarize either service to self or service to others. Now, this density also has what is called the veil, which third density is the only density that has the veil. And that veil compartmentalizes our consciousness and keeps us from clearly seeing the real from the unreal. And there's a lot of other aspects of the veil I cover in a previous episode, so I don't want to get too far into that. Another aspect of this experience in third density is the dynamics that we experience with other people. Like I said, there's three types of people within third density. The first type, which 50% of the planetary population falls in, is what I would call the native third density people. The native third density people are only here to make the choice, either the polarized positive or the polarized negative. It could be their first third density cycle, or it could be their second or third density cycle. And the reason why someone would repeat a third density cycle is if through all of your incarnations through the 75,000 year cycle, you didn't make choices that polarized you positive or negative, you would end up in what they call the gray area in between. So you haven't achieved a strong enough polarization in either direction. And so that would mean that you need to repeat the grade in a sense, just like you would in school. If you fail a grade, they hold you back. You have to repeat that grade. And so this grade that you have to repeat is 75,000 years long. And so if you fall at the end of the 75,000 year cycle, you fall in the gray area, then you would reincarnate into another third density cycle and you would redo the whole 75,000 years. And hopefully at the end of that next 75,000 year cycle, you would have made enough choices to then move on to fourth density. And so, like I said, 50% of the population is going to be native third density souls. Now, the native third density souls, all they have to do is make a choice. They are just dealing with the basic dynamics of third density, the basic dynamics of dealing with people that are also trying to polarize. They're not necessarily being heavily attacked unless they have some narcissists in their lives. Or, it's a simpler existence for a native third density person to move through third density because all they have to do is just make a choice and deal with their past karmas from previous incarnations within third density. They're just dealing with those dynamics. And the reason I'm stressing this is once I get into the two other types of people within third density, you'll start to understand that a native third density person is not going to experience the same dynamics as one of the other types of people found in third density. And so those native third density people move through each incarnation, making their choices, interacting with other people, with all the dynamics, just the natural dynamics that you encounter within your family and friends and your work associates, and then, people you encounter in your daily life. They're not going to experience heavy spiritual attacks unless those attacks are being brought about through other native third density people material. And so life is pretty simple, pretty straightforward in a roundabout way. Now, native third density people possibly not agree with that, but they don't understand the dynamics that, let's say, a wanderer would experience. Now, you would ask, well, what's a wanderer? Well, a wanderer is the next type of person that you find within third density. And I'm going to get into that in a second because another important aspect of the type of person that you find in third density is what's called an organic portal. Now, an organic portal, this information does not come from the raw material. There's a little bit, if you know how to decipher the raw material, there's a sentence within the raw material that hints around at what an organic portal is. An organic portal, just the topic alone, tends to trigger people because a lot of people believe that everyone has a soul, but I don't find that to be true. And the raw material, in a roundabout way, states that not everyone has soul. Everyone has the spark of the creator. That's a fact. But a developed soul, not everyone has. Now, to understand this, you have to understand the concept of the mind-body-spirit complex. First density and most of second, an entity will only have a mind-body complex. It's not until the very tail end, maybe the last lifetime of a second density entity where they gain the spirit complex to complete the mind body spirit complex. And once you gain that spirit complex, that's when the entity moves into third density. So you have to think about it as you have to gain a soul through a certain amount of experience. And so in third density, 50% of the population has a complete mind body spirit complex. And that's what makes them third density and all of the energy centers that go along with that mind, body, spirit complex. Now, an organic portal only has the mind body complex and doesn't have the spirit complex. Therefore, they don't have all of their energy centers. Now, let me back up for just a second and explain where the concept of an organic portal comes from. It doesn't come from the raw material necessarily. A lot of these details come from what's called the Cassiopean material. Cassiopean material is material that I have been studying for about 20 years, right along with the raw material. Now, the Cassiopean material needs a disclaimer. The Cassiopean material was channeled by first Frank, and then it was taken over by Laura Knight, which happens to be my second cousin, and something I didn't realize until recently that we were related. Now, the Cassiopean material, there has been a cult that's formed around the material, and that cult is being directed by the channeler Laura Knight, which in my opinion is a service to self individual. And they're claiming the material is coming from sixth density, just like the raw material. And in a sense, that's true, but in another sense, it's not completely factual. So let me go into how I know this. For one, in the raw material, they talk about the Cassiopeans are service to self. It's very clear in the raw material. Now, another thing is that just because channeling is coming from service to self doesn't mean there's not value in that material. The service to self, just like service to others, have to abide by certain rules. And those rules are that you don't infringe upon the free will of others. So they find a way around that through trickery, through manipulation, and through the way that they word things. So I would say that within the Cassiopean material, there's probably 70% of the material is factual information. And then within that 70% of factual information, there's only a very small percentage that is actually useful for understanding what is defined as the law of one, which the raw material covers, and which is what I'm covering here. I'm trying to stay away from conspiracy theories, which I feel like are a waste of time. For some, conspiracy theories are an entrance into the type of material that I'm covering here, but entertaining conspiracy theories and studying them, pondering them, and trying to grasp and understanding is a waste of time. And even though, in my opinion, Laura is channeling service to self entities, you could still gain a lot of information from that material. You just have to use your discernment. Service to self, they, for one, like to brag. And in my opinion, that's how the information about organic portals came out. Organic portals are a product of the service to self, fourth density beings. They put the organic portals here within third density cycles. All third density cycles have organic portals, which make up 50% of the population. And they use those organic portals to their advantage. But before we go any further, I want to explain some more on the Cassiopean material and Lauronite. Like I had said before, that there has been a cult that's formed around the Cassiopean material. And it's my intention as we move forward, because like I said, there's a lot of valuable information within the Cassiopean material that will help us understand life and the dynamics of life within the third density cycle. And as I had mentioned before, is that regardless of whether an entity is service to self or service to others, at a higher density, they cannot lie, because that is an infringement upon free will. And free will is the law of the universe. And it's not that crimes of the infringement upon free will isn't a thing, but at the same time, when you're dealing with channeled material, there's a chance for the fourth density service to self entity to depolarize themselves. So that would move them down the rungs of the ladder in regards to how much power they have and how much influence they have in their own density. And so we're going to be cautious with just flat out lying continually. So they have to tell the truth to a great extent. So we can use this material with our discernment to get important information about third density. So eventually I'm going to start talking about the Cassiopean material a lot more. And also I'm going to start to reveal why, in my opinion, that this material is coming from service to self, fourth density beings. All right. So I feel like that's enough of a disclaimer for the Cassiopean material for now, for me to move forward and explain what an organic portal is and what their role is here in third density. An organic portal is a person that only has their bottom three energy centers, saying they're only a mind-body complex, not a mind-body-spirit complex. And an organic portal is a first density entity that's been tricked into entering a human body. And the reason why they call it an organic portal is because it's a flesh and blood portal that allows fourth density service to self entities to work through. So it gives them an access into third density, because a fourth density service to self entity cannot just come into third density and exist as a solid being within the third density. It's not compatible. They can pop in and out to a certain extent, but they can't stay for very long. And so they want to have an influence over third density cycle, because that's how they gain more polarization within their fourth density cycle. So today is brought to you by Fusion Body Studio. If you're watching this show today, you're obviously into spirituality. But if you're not exercising, you're not on the right path, because spirituality starts in the body. Fusion Body Studio is female owned and operated. And at Fusion Body Studio, they take all the traditional teachings of the East and merge it into modern day exercises. Right now, Fusion Body Studio is running a special. If you use promo code AYA20, you'll get 20% off your first 6 months at Fusion Body Studio. With tuition already cheap, this is a deal you can't pass up. All information is in the description box below. And if you think of it like this, we as third density beings eat, if you're not a vegetarian, you eat second density animals. So just like third density beings will trap and raise second density animals to be eaten, and I know this sounds very morbid, but this is the reality of it. So just as third density beings feed on second density beings, both plants and animals, fourth density beings, service to self, feed off of third density beings. And so they use third density beings to gain polarization within fourth density. And it's just like service to others' fourth density helps third density beings to grow in awareness and understanding. So it works on both sides: service to self, feeding on third density, and then service to others, fourth density, helping third density beings. So the way that the fourth density service to self comes in and harvests polarity off of third density is through mostly organic portals. So they're able to influence organic portals to do their bidding. Now, I'm trying to explain this in the simplest terms possible. So organic portals, their very nature is narcissists. They're all narcissists. They all think that they're special because, and they know this sort of, it's like intuitively, consciously they don't know this, but intuitively they know that they've, in a sense, skipped second density. Because remember, an organic portal is a first density being that has skipped second for now and dropped into third density. Now, the fourth density service to self have tricked first density entities to enter into this cycle. First density thinks, as they enter into this third density cycle, that they've skipped a grade and that they're special as a first density being. They don't know that once 75,000 year third density cycle is done, they're going to drop back into first density cycle and have to continue their first density cycle. And then they're also going to have to go through second density. But what it is that's happened is that since they've been working with the fourth density service to self and third density, they become imprinted with the service to self propensities. So they'll go through their third density cycle, and then once that third density cycle is finished, that organic portal will go all the way back to first density. And then they'll finish their first density, and then they'll have to go through second density. But then once that entity that has been used as an organic portal reincarnates into a native third density cycle, they've already had this imprint of their cycle as an organic portal, and they're going to have more of a drive, a natural drive to polarize service to self. Okay, so the organic portal is here to do the bidding of the fourth density service to self. The main purpose of an organic portal is to attach and attack what's called a wanderer. I'm going to come back to the organic portals, but before I move back into explaining more about the organic portals, I first need to describe the other type of person found here. So we have the native souled third density person, which makes up 50% of the population. And then we have the other 50% of the population, which are organic portals. And then we have, out of the 50% of native third density souled people that are not organic portals, about 2% of the remainder are what is called a wanderer. Now, a wanderer is either of fifth density, which is the rarest, or sixth density, which most of the wanderers are coming from sixth density. And sixth density wanderers and fifth density wanderers are here to resolve residual karma left over from their third density cycle. Now, sixth density wanderers reincarnate into a third density cycle, and they're subject to the same veil as everyone else. So it's a level playing field, in a sense, for these higher density entities that come in the third density cycle. They consider sixth density wanderers to be the quintessential super soldier, in a sense. They experience the most attacks. Really, you could say that the only reason we have organic portals within third density is to attack and attach to wanderers. So what makes a wanderer different than a native third density person? A wanderer is going to have more access to what is called a siddhi, and that's a Sanskrit word. And a siddhi would be considered magical powers, spiritual powers, the ability to manifest things, the ability to have just more refined spiritual perception. I think that for a sixth density wanderer, the veil is thinned. And with that thinning of the veil comes some abilities, but those abilities come with a drawback. And that drawback is the sixth density wanderer is like a beacon of light, and it attracts the insects, you can say, which are organic portals. So the organic portals are here to try to keep wanderers in check. So a wanderer always has to watch their back, because a wanderer will commonly have a lot of organic portals around them. And organic portals have this natural tendency to want to charge themselves with the energy of a wanderer. It's like a wanderer is a battery to them, and they intuitively know that a wanderer is a really strong battery. A native third density person isn't nearly as charged as a wanderer. And that's what intuitively makes organic portals gravitate within the lives of a wanderer. And now that I've explained what a wanderer is, and I'll get back and explain more about a wanderer in a little bit, but now that I've touched on wanderers, I can go back and I can start to explain organic portals a little more. Now, an organic portal can be pretty intelligent. Organic portal could be actually highly intelligent. And so don't think that they're a dumbed down version of a human. They're usually pretty smart. They're really good at memorizing and regurgitating material. They have zero creativity. They seek out people that have a lot of creativity. They seek out people that are tapped in spiritually, like a wanderer. They'll attempt to attach themselves to wanderers and stick around the wanderer in their orbit, or become friends or close associates with a wanderer, and they'll seem to be supporting that wanderer's path. But little do some wanderers know that eventually the organic portal's goal is to stick around that wanderer long enough to get as much information and energy from them as possible, and to eventually destroy the wanderer's reputation, or destroy them emotionally, and sometimes even physically, and then steal all their information and then mimic that person. So as they destroy them, they'll take all the information and all the energy from that wanderer, and then act as though they're the ones that came up with that plan. They're the ones that created whatever that wanderer created, and then they'll use that information and they'll mimic the wanderer. And so that's one way that an organic portal will use a wanderer, is they'll just literally steal from them, try to destroy them, and then use their information as though it's their own. And it happens over and over and over again. Not only do they try to steal from wanderers, they also try to keep wanderers from fulfilling their missions here. Remember, like I said, a wanderer's mission is to resolve their past karmas from their native third density cycles. As a soul progresses through fourth density and fifth density, and then makes it into sixth density, they realize along that journey that they still have, even within sixth density, they still have some unresolved issues that haven't been cleared, created within their third density cycle. And that's the reason why a wanderer would wander back into third density. Now, a wanderer is an extremely brave soul. And the reason why I say a wanderer is an extremely brave soul is because they're coming from sixth density, and they're making the decision to go back and enter into a third density cycle. And that's a whole 75,000 year cycle. They don't just like pop in and pop out. They'll start at the very beginning of a third density cycle, and they'll move through that whole 75,000 year cycle. And they're still bound to the laws of polarization within third density. And they're still subject to the same veil that all other people are subject to. And what that means, where the bravery comes from, is that a sixth density wanderer, or fifth, can get stuck within the cycle, meaning that just because they're coming from a higher density doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes, doesn't mean that they can't get thrown off their path. And so let's say there was a sixth density wanderer that came, and through that 75,000 year cycle, they ended up polarizing service to self, which can happen. They could get so thrown off their path, one incarnation after the next, that that they get stuck back having to not only go through that whole third density cycle, that 75,000 year cycle, but then they could end up graduating into fourth density service to self. And that would mean that they would have to then go through all of fourth density again, then go through all of fifth density again to then make it back to their native density, which is sixth density. So they have to repeat all that over again. And so that's one way that a wanderer is extremely brave to risk that depolarization and then to switch it up coming from a density that has no polarity in a sense, but then dropping back into third and then getting stuck having to do fourth and fifth. And we're talking, they're coming from a timeless state, but if you want to talk in terms of time, that's millions, if not billions of years of having to redo all of that just to make it back home to their sixth density native cycle. And so that's one of the goals of the fourth density service to self is to ensnare sixth density wanderer, trying to pull them into their service to self fourth density cycle, which then they can rule over them and use that powerful entity as their slave. And that's just sort of breaking it down in the most simplest terms. I mean, it's more complex than that, but it really doesn't matter because we don't need to understand those complexities. The reason why I'm explaining this stuff is just to give people a grasp of the dynamics that are in play here within the third density cycle with these three different types of people here. Now, the organic portals, they don't really mess with the native third density people because they don't have the kind of power that they need to charge themselves. And that's just this natural magnetic draw that they have. They're not aware of it. I mean, they can't be aware of it because they don't have their upper energy centers. So they don't have any intuition, zero intuition, because they don't have the spirit complex. And intuition comes with the spirit complex. So zero intuition. They just have the drive to live and survive. And as well, they're being unconsciously, because they're not conscious of it, they have this unconscious connection to the fourth density service to self, which are using them as their puppets. They don't have to constantly control them. They're not constantly sending messages into their head. The fourth density service to self understand the propensities of an organic portal, and it's good enough to just sort of nudge an organic portal into a wanderer's life, a specific organic portal. So the fourth density service itself would know the propensities of the organic portal and also would understand the life path of that organic portal. And they would know which one is right for a given wanderer's life. And so they would just give that organic portal a little psychic nudge, have a little connection with them, give them the directives in a sense, the directives to head into a wanderer's life. Or just so it could just so happen that a wanderer would just have an organic portal sort of stumble into their lives and it just works out perfect or not so perfect, depending on whose side you're on. And so that organic portal would just go through their natural inclinations of connecting with that power source of the wanderer. And as soon as that connection is made, then they can start to feed off of that wanderer's life and their life force. So that wraps it up for now with this episode about the three different types of people found in third density. And what I would like is for the listeners to leave questions below. I can do a follow-up video and clear up any confusion, misunderstanding, or some blind spots of information that I could have missed or that I could have covered a little better in the video, because I know that this information can be very confusing and a challenge to understand. There's a lot of detail, and it would take me too long to go over all the details in one video. And so a Q&A would be a great follow-up to this. So if you leave your comments and questions below, my following video could be answering those questions and bringing more clarity into what an organic portal is, what a native third density souled person is, and also what a wanderer is. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Please leave a like and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more of the information that I have about the raw material and the Cassiopeia material. And until next time, thank you.